Welcome everyone to Live with Janome. I'm Ann Hine, embroidery software specialist for Janome America, and I'll be right with you. I'm going to wait here for just a second before I put the camera on. I do have my comments up, so if you can hear me okay, give me a thumbs up. If there's an issue, let me know, and I'll try to fix it from my end. Hopefully everyone's having a great day today. Let's see, here we go. Let's put the camera on. Hi, everybody. So welcome. Here we are. It's Live with Janome. And as I said at the top of it, I'm Ann Hine. So welcome. We have quite a few people here today. So first and foremost, if you watched my live yesterday, I had a little glitch in the middle. So I'm going to redo that section and they'll repost the whole video with that section in it. So that'll be coming up in the next day or so, probably I'll probably get it done later today and they'll put it up tomorrow, hopefully. So that'll take care of that little glitch in the middle. I'm not sure what happened. Sometimes switching back and forth between camera and my laptop and all of that, it doesn't always go where it's supposed to go. So it looked good on my end. So when I flipped through to check different sections, it all looked good. So don't know what happened there, but I will fix it for you. So today we're going to talk about rope bowls, and I don't know, have a lot of you tried the rope bowls? Give me some thumbs up so we can see where we're at with that. I don't know if anyone's given it a try. They're actually really easy. And what's interesting, I was talking to another educator, and rope bowls were popular a ways back, and then they went away for a bit, and now they're back again. And people are being very creative with them. I've seen some really amazing ones out there. So there's a lot of range. You can go from very simple to very ornate. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. We're going to talk about simple, but we're also going to talk about adding embroidery because, we like to combine our things together. And the rope bowls are beautiful on their own. There's lots of things you can add fabrics to them. You can use different threads to create them different ways. You can have colored rope. You can have different types of rope with it. So there's a lot of options out there. And I'm just going to show you a little bit and how to add embroidery because a lot of us are trying to do that. And it depends on some of our machines. When you try to add embroidery to something that's thick already, it doesn't work as well. Or even the embroidery design might not work as well with that with the rope because it has to go through such a thick area depending on the type of rope that you're using. So there's options for that. So I want to show you that part of it. So let's see here if we have a couple people. Oh, so Marty, I hope you're not still talking as I don't hear you. Can everyone else hear me? Let's see. Maybe it's just Marty. Let me know, please. Can everyone hear me? Give me some thumbs up. Oh, it's okay now. Okay. Oh my goodness gracious. I need like 6 eyes or maybe even more so I can keep an eye over here, what's happening, keep an eye at what's over here and what's behind me. I don't know. So you'd think after having children, I would have a second set of eyes. You know how we all would wish for that. All right, so we're all doing pretty good. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to the machine, which is right behind me, and show you my little sample that I made today and give you some options. Now, I did say in the little blurb that I wanted to show you 2 different ways with Artistic Digitizer and without. So I'm going to first go over and show you the whole option, and then we'll go into the software and I'll discuss further. Again, post your comments and I can answer as I go. I'm going to move my iPad over to the other side so I'll be able to see with what's happening. So let's go to the machine and I will pop that up here. There we go. All right, so here's my little sample that I made today. And a couple things about this one. Now you can use a lot of different products, rope type things for your bowls. Now this is a shiny, quite shiny one. This is actually a more of a poly. It's not a cotton like that. Okay, this one is the type when you get to the end so it doesn't ravel, you can melt it with a flame. I wouldn't suggest that in some instances because it might leave a black area. But this one is could be meltable, so you need to remember what you're using. And then I have done some with this. This is like cotton cording that you would put inside a when you're making trim. You could use this, or you can use clothesline rope as well. You just want to be careful about what is inside it. There are some that have a hard inner core, so you want to be careful about that because you will be stitching. You know, when you start this, you bring it around like so, and I really like to flip it this direction. I'll tell you why. So you really want to be able to stitch through it because you're going to be stitching in this area when you start. So, and the reason I flip that is when I go to start mine, I do start, if I'm going to do a round one, I do kind of pull it around a couple times. And I want it to be in this direction so that I'm adding the cording on the right edge and turning it this way because my feed dogs, as I'm turning this part, they're working with the feed dogs and it's working around that way. So it's going with the feed dogs, just like that. All right, so this is coming on the right side and this is turning in under the foot. The other thing I'm finding out too, and let me see if I can zoom in here on my foot. We'll see, that's always tricky. Oh, there we go, we're zooming a little bit, but it doesn't always zoom. There we go. So do you see the little arrow right there in the center, that little red part? When I'm doing my cording, what I like to do is, and I'll show you my stitch. I use a zigzag that has the M next to it for middle because that means it's going to be stitching on this side of the red and that side of the red. It comes from the middle. The right one is starting on the right and it's working this way. The middle is going to be stitching over an imaginary line in the middle. And so I try to make the middle where that gap is between my two pieces. So it'll stitch on the left into the right, left, right, and so forth. So all I have to do is keep that little red part lined up with the gap. And I'm not gonna stitch while this way because I have to really concentrate, but I want to show you kind of my position. So when I make it, I try to keep that red part right there. Now you may have other ways you like to do this. You may have different feet that you like to use, and that's fine too. Everybody has their way to do it, and I would like people to experiment, try different ways, and what works for you, because not everything works for every person. It just depends. Now, my basket that I did here, I did use red thread in both the bobbin and the top, and I did that sort of on purpose. I wanted it to be a little bit decorative with the red, but I also wanted you to see when you're stitching. Let's see if we can get in close enough without getting blurry. You can see that it's going on both sides of that rope, on the edge you just did and the new edge, the edge you just did and the new edge. And then I just did this little here, and I really actually didn't do a great job because I got a little flap there. I made a little flap for the ending and I was experimenting with this, but I looked away and I didn't have this tucked in. So I have an extra little blob right there, but that's okay for now. It will, on this side, it looks pretty good. So that's kind of what we're looking for. And I'll talk about the inside part of this in just a moment. So that covers the basics of creating your bowl. You're going to create the base first. That's the circular part. And then after you add your embroidery, that's when you start building the edges. And to build it, and I have one here started. Here's one started, and I have white thread in there. That's why I wanted to show you the red. So when I go to stitch this one, I will have that little red arrow in between the gap here so I can see what's going on. When I start to build, what I'll do is turn this up this way, and as I go around, I'll have it at an angle like that so that I can make it come up on the sides. And I'm making a rather small one because I wanted to just get some stuff done. You can make these much larger if you want, and then you have more room for embroidery. And as I said, you can embroider directly on this depending on your design. Not every design will work stitching through all of this, okay? And my point is, you know, I've already stitched all this. It takes a little while to get this all stitched. And let me just double check that everything is working okay over here. Make sure everything is stitched, and then when you go to embroider on it, if it messes up, then you've got to pick it all out. So what I started doing is I will embroider on fabric, and then I will attach the fabric here. And there's two ways to do this. I added the fabric. I made outlines in Artistic to create a pocket like this, like that. So this is the wrong side of all of it. And of course I made my little channel, and I would turn this. I didn't embroider this one. I just wanted to show you what it looked like here. I would turn this right side out, and then it would look like this. Here's the little channel at the bottom, like that. And then I would put my piece inside there and restart over here. And I'll show you how I restart it over here. So now I have it like this instead of directly on there. And you can use, I just used a white fabric today, but as you saw here, you can use pretty prints. You can use two different fabrics if you want. And there's options. You can add cork to the back after a bit too. There's a way to do that. I'm not going to show that today. I'm just showing the embroidery. And this design here, this is from OESD, and it's a raw edge kind of, I'm trying to think what they call it. It wasn't just raw edge. It was like, I can't remember what they called it. So this part here is quite rough, and the inside is not. So I have some extra threads, but I thought that would look kind of interesting in the bottom of the little bowl. The other thing I thought about while I was doing this, and I couldn't stitch one because you know they take a little while, but wouldn't it be interesting to have a paint stitch in the bottom? You know, because it has all that thread work. That would make a really interesting inside. Paint stitch is very thready. It's a lot of stitching. You wouldn't want to stitch that directly on here. You would want to stitch it on a fabric, a firm fabric, and add the backing and then put it all together. Now I did it in the software and then in the hoop of my machine, much like you would do a stuffy or something like that. You don't have to do it this way. If you don't have software to create your circles, you could embroider. You could figure out how big your circle is or lay your circle on top of your piece and draw around it, and then leave some extra and then stitch that on that line and then turn it. But this way, I now have a template. I've created a template in my software so that I can pop it in there and I know what size I have to do for here. So it makes it easy. Now, if you don't want to make the whole, you know, pillow type thing, you can actually not do the extra steps, but leave an outline there for you to put another piece on top when you're done and stitch it with your sewing machine. All right, if you didn't want to do it completely in the hoop. But I figured while I have this in the hoop and I've embroidered it, I might as well do the whole thing together. To me, it made sense. And I'll show you how this all goes together in just a moment. I just want to check to make sure if we have any questions or anything happening over here. All looks good. All right, so once you turn it out, you know, you have the little channel here. And to put this inside, what you're going to do is, I like this part when I get it inside, it's going to come out close to this edge over here. And I'll show you why. So I usually roll mine up kind of tight like this. And I left a 2-inch gap. Now, if you do it like a dinner size one, you want to leave a bigger gap. All right. And I'm going to stick this in here like so. It's a little fiddly when you're working to get it in here and so forth. So I'm going to have to fiddle with it. I'm working around the camera. Let me get it a little tighter. Here we go. And that's why, depending on the rope you're using, if you have a more supple rope, it's going to work a little easier. Let's see. Yes, I encased the pillow over the rope. The little, yep, that's what see how I'm putting that inside there? And for me, what I found is if I kind of turn this a little bit and keep this edge close to there, I'm pretty good. And then I'm going to start opening it up inside. It is fiddly. And of course, when you're talking to people, it's even more fiddly. There we go. I got it against the edge over here. And I'm just going to push it over. There we go. It's coming. There we are. All right. And then I'm just going to slide it a little bit. I like the start. I like to have my rope coming out of here, and the closure is going to be underneath the rope when I get going. So I just like to pull that in close. Now remember, I used the, and I got to trim a thread. I used the channel method, right? Let me see what I did with my other. I made this little channel, remember? And that helps push everything back in when I'm done. So here is the opening. I've got the piece on this side here. And then I'm going to take the back section and I'm actually going to lift it up and put it over my rope like that. So it fits in there like that. Now, one of the things you can do is I measured my my disc. I knew what size discs I was going to make, so I measured them, and then I started creating it. So on one of the ones I did, after I got done and I stuffed it in here, it seemed a little loose. So I went around a little bit further to make it fit in there a little better. So if you have to adjust it, you can, depending on your piece. But if you make a couple of discs and you measure them, you want to add a little bit to your original size of the pillow, because you want to make sure you can get, over this gap here. You don't want it too tight or it's going to be doing this kind of thing. So now I'm just going to pull this over and tuck it in like that. And I'll fiddle with that in a moment. And then on this side, I do have some stitches here. Okay, that was from my tack down. And then I'm just going to fold on the tack down, tuck all this in. There we go. There it is. See how that's getting nice and clean there? How that's looking? Your rope is going to go right along there. And I am going to put, you could put a clip there. You could put a pin. I'm going to grab a pin only because my clips are further away. Here we go. And I'm just going to put a pin here to hold this, like this. Just like that. And then I'm going to work my way over here where it's a little bit more cumbersome, but I can work that around. And see, this is why I like that even closer to this corner, but I'll work it in. We'll be okay. Because you're going to come around and close that up anyways. Let me move it this way. There we go. That's it. There we go. That's a little bit better. Nice and tight around there. And I'm going to tuck all this stuff in, the fiddly parts. Just like that. There we go. And having that channel helps push all those pieces, that inside part, up in here so it doesn't give you so much trouble. There we go. And then I'm just going to put a pin here just to keep everything kind of in place. And then I like to make sure before I start that everything is flat within here, that I don't have something gathered up. Let me check to see if there's any questions. Now you could, if you wanted to, you could actually make your little piece with batting in it and quilt something here. And instead of having, or even have quilt batting on the back side, you do have to adjust then, because remember when you get the rope in there, you're going to have the batting on either side or on one side, so it's going to make it a little thicker. So you may have to make your pillow just a little scooch bit wider on there, the diameter just a little bit wider. So let's put another pin here for just a second. There we go. And then I'm going to start stitching, and this is going to be attached just like that going around. And I'll show you. I'll stitch it around once. And I'm going to show you, see if I can get my camera to come over to the screen, what stitch I use so you can see what stitch. Now I have to switch over to sewing because I had left it in embroidery. Here we go. Okay, there we are. Get that out of the way. All right, so over here on the screen, I'm just going to hold my camera here. I like this stitch here, number 9. See how it says M? That means it's going to stitch over the middle of the foot. This is going to be starting on the right side and going over this way. So there are times when you would want to use the right, but I like the middle for this because I can use that marking on my foot. So I'm going to select this one, and then I've already saved it as my favorite stitch. I've made some adjustments. For me, it's working good for my width to be 3.6 and my length to be 2.1. And so that's how far apart it is. Now to do a favorite stitch is I just went in here. We have a lot of machines that have favorite stitch, and I selected the FS with the arrow going in the hoop into the folder. And then I touched FS1 and it filled it in for me. So now every time I go there, that's my favorite stitch. I could have put it in 2 and kept the default over here if I wanted to, but I just put it in there for today. I'm okay with that. And then you close that. Now we have several machines that have the favorite stitch. So you want to explore your machine to find out how that works for you. I love working with favorite stitch. It saves me from trying to remember anything from before. All right, so here we go. We're going to give this a good old try. I do have a little extra thread here. I don't want that one. Let's put that out of the way. Let's see if I can get this to look a little nicer here. There we go. All right. And it's when I come back over, that's going to be covered. So I am going to start like right about here. And I do want to bring up, I'm going to bring my bobbin thread up just so I don't have anything happening down there underneath where I can't see what's going on. I have both my threads here on the top. I'm going to put my foot down. I do have my pivot feature on, my hover, so when I stop sewing, my foot will come up, my needle will stay down. And I have my little arrow kind of between the fabric and my piece of rope. And let's see, and I am sewing, I sew with my, there we go, with my start stop button. So let's see here, get this all going. And I think I'm going slow enough, we'll see. There we go. Just go a little slower. I'm going to take this pin out so I can get up to it. Now I want to keep that right between there because I want to get on the fabric and on my rope. There you go. Now I could use a narrower stitch if I wanted to, but I'm talking, so I think I'm going to leave it wide. It'll give me a better chance. But you can experiment with what you like as your width. So I would go all the way around like this, one row. I'll show you the back in just a moment when we get around. And all I have to do is keep, I'm really looking at that red mark, and I'm keeping that between the rope and the edge of my centerpiece. There we go, we're coming around. And you can use other feet, you know, you might find something you work better. You might have a better option than me. This seems to be working for me. But, and this is what I like to tell people, you know, as you're doing it, you know, try different ways, look up different things. Not one person's way isn't always the best. And my way isn't always the best. It's what works for me. But what I love is I love to show you, and then I like to see what you guys experiment and come up with, because sometimes it inspires me in a different direction too. So everybody looks at things in a different way. So it's really good to see what other people are doing. So you can see I'm coming around to the start. And I'm just going to come up on this. Let's see here. Let me just double check any comments over here. Everything. Well, my needle right now, this is a blue needle, and it seems to be working okay. This is a pretty soft rope that I've been working with, so it seems to work out okay. If I had a thicker rope, I might go, or if I used a heavier fabric for in here, I might use a size 14, or I'd go up a needle on there. So now I'm right to my edge. I'm going to go past it just a little bit. And if you have one of those purple things, you can definitely use that. Now that I'm past that, I'm just going to go one stitch to that side. Now, this is where I'm going to start, where I'm going to bring this up, and this is going to start making my edge so that I have an edge going on here. So depending on how the angle that you have your bowl on is how tight your sides will be. You can also give this a little tug, and that helps bring it into, but for me, I don't want to tug, because if you tug, you have to be careful about keeping the same tension on it when you do that, so you don't have it waving. This way, I'm just bringing it right this way, and it takes a few rounds for it to start showing, going up. We'll go around a little bit further, and then I'm going to show you in the software how I created my little pillow. There we go. Oh, it helps if you don't stand on your rope. There we go. That's what was happening. There we are. All right, so let me get a little bit further around here. Now you can always see how this is kind of doing this kind of thing. If you used a fusible stabilizer, and the fusible was on the other side, you could iron this onto the rope. I don't know if I would suggest that, though, because once this lays flat, it lays flat. So, all right, let's stop here. You can kind of see up here that it's where it's starting to come in, right? Did you see that? And I'm going to actually, this is our beginning. So this is where we started. And on the one that I made here, this is where I started. I had a little bit of, seeing, if I was using maybe a white thread, you wouldn't even see that, but I did use the red so you could see how I did going around here, catching that. You see how that's starting to come up? I wasn't sure I would like this kind of rope, but I am liking the shiny part of it. I don't know, I guess I like shiny things. So I would just continue going around until I got it, as however high I want. I could go a lot higher with this if I wanted to. I mean, I did stop here, but you know what? I could peel this off, and I could start, add a piece on and start doing creative things, maybe some kind of roughly outer edge. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do with it. I've seen some beautiful samples out there. So you can get your embroidery in there instead of having it embroidered directly on there, and then it covers up your back really nicely too, so the back is clear, so you have that really nice. Now if you were really on top of it, you could create the fabric for back here first. And I was thinking, after I got one done, I could have had like my name back here. You would have to stitch that first, or I could have stitched an all over design back here. Wouldn't that look really cool? And then I'd have my design in the center. So as I'm doing these, my brain is making like 600 more projects in my head. So there we go with that. Let's see what else we have here. If there's some, so this rope doesn't really have any stretch. Now, if you use this is, it might be a little bit with this. this is cotton cording, so it does have a little bit of give to it. This does flatten out more. If you use, I don't have a sample of it though. There's other clotheslines that you can, clothesline rope that you can get. I think it's a little thicker and a little more firm. You just don't want those. Now, I know people have used the sort of hard plastic as well. Sam Fung from our office, he did some way back when with plastic roping. I think he called it the grocery store bag wrap that you can find at the dollar stores. He did some really interesting all plastic bowls. That would be really cool. I don't know if you wouldn't, you could, those would be hard to embroider on, but you could make the pillow thing and create some nice ones. Those would be great for something you're using outside or other items. So just gives you an option of, try different materials. Some would be better than others. Different threads might be better than others. Today I'm sewing with, this is embroidery bobbin thread down here, and this is glide thread on top, and it's just sewing beautifully. I'm not having any troubles with that. Okay, so I'm going to switch back over to the other side, and I'm going to make sure that everything switches so that you guys can see what's happening here. Let me go to camera first. There we go. Hopefully I'm back on. There we are. All right, I'm going to put the software up, and then I'll show you in the software how I created the outer part. And it's very simple. It's not difficult at all how to do it. So let's go to there. Now, as I said, if you don't have software, what you can do is take your disc, lay it on your fabric, trace around it, and then you probably want to stitch outside that just a touch when you layer it, because you remember your rope has a little bit of thickness, so you need to leave a little room for that part of it. Okay, and then give yourself like a 1/4 inch trim when you go around, and you can still do the channel when you're stitching like that. And some people might want to not even deal with the software, but if you already have it in your hoop, you can definitely do it there. So let me switch to the software, and I gotta pull it up. Here we go. All right, and I will open up this one here. So here it is. And you can see over here in my sequence window, I have 2 circles. This is placement. This is tacked down to the bottom fabric, all the embroidery. And then down here is the finishing. So I would lay the backing down and would stitch and leave this. So easily create this by, let's grab my design. Actually, let's just take we'll move these out of the way and I'll recreate it. So I had my design, and I had I'd made a disc, and I had measured my disc. And, if you can read the ruler correctly, you usually can, using the circular, yes, you could actually use the circular attachment as well for making your circle to go around that, as long as you knew this, the center of your design. Yes, that's another great option. That's a great option if you have your circular sewing attachment. So to make that circle, I just went over here to the shapes tool, and I just drew a circle, and I selected it. Now, if you hold down your shift, you'll get a perfect circle. I'm going to delete the inside, leaving just my outside part. And then I wanted my outside part, I have to look at my size over here because I did it probably this one here. The width was 5.98. Yeah, just under 6. So let's delete this circle and redo it because I didn't hold down my shift. Oops, and my shape. There we go. And I'm going to delete the inside and put that here. So I want it to be like just 6 inches wide, 6.0 or 5. 9/8, and then I'm going to center it over my design like that. There we go. So that is is going to be my finishing stitch, the last part that I stitch, and this needs to go over just a little bit more. There we go. I always check to see that my design is going to be within the bounds of that circle. And then from that circle, I created my other circles. And it's, for some reason, this is not, let me make it 6.0 on both. There we go. For some reason, I held down the shift and control and it didn't, for some reason, I must have lifted my finger at the last minute. Okay, so now we have the right one. And to make, this would be my stitch at the end that I'm going to do. So the next one I need to do, I need a placement line. So I want my placement line to be probably a 1/4 inch away from this. So what I can do is touch proportional and make this, if I wanted a 1/4, I have to add a 1/4 on the left and a 1/4 on the right. So that's 6.5. So I would make this 6.5. There we go. But let's undo that. Let's copy, paste, then make it 6.5. There we go. And I proportional checked so I don't have to keep putting in 2 of them. Since that's selected, I'm just gonna change the color. I'm gonna use this purple color down here. So I have my placement line, I have my finishing, and now I need a tack down. And the tack down is just a little bit bigger. I wanted it a little bit bigger, and I'll explain why in just a moment. So I'm going to make it like maybe I'll make it 6.2. Oh, and why don't if I would just remember to copy paste, that would be good. There we go, 6.2. There we are. And actually, I think I want it 6.1. Let me just go down here. I want it really close, and I'll tell you why. Let me change the color of it to this dark blue. Because when we're down here, when I have that channel right here, this line of stitches helps me know where I have to fold the fabric. It gives me a visual. When I fold it inside, I had a little line of stitches there. So now all I have to do is take the black one, that's the inner one, and I need to create the channel. Now, because this is a shape, I have to convert it first. So up at the top, I'm going to do convert to curves. And then I'm going to do edit nodes. And right here, I'm going to put my cursor there. I'm going to right click and do split outline. And we'll scroll in close so you can see. So you can see it's split there. And then I want to add a node over here about an inch away. And I would measure that, but I'm just going to put it in here. I'm going to say add node, and then I'll do the same over here. Add node. And then I'm going to change these nodes to cusps. So they're corners. There we go. And now I can just take this piece and bring it down. Take the arrow, point it up. Take this arrow and point it down. Do the same thing over here. Bring this over here. That split outline is fabulous because you don't have to go and do, usually I would do the knife and so forth. So now I have that nice channel. But I would actually, my ones that are down here, I would put them in the order that I need them to stitch, which would be this outer one here. The purple would need to be first. Then I would need my tack down, then my embroidery, and then the this outer part. Now to move them around, you need to go up here to auto, and now I can see those 3 parts, and I can move them around. So this part here needs to be first, and I'm just going to pretend this is the top, and then this one would be second, and this would be my last one. Does that make sense? And then I could send this all to the machine. So so that's what it would look like when you're done. And I would save, what I would do is if you're going to make this size often, save these three as your template. And I saved one as a template and I put it as template 600. So I knew it was 6.0, that was the size my piece had to be that fit inside there. Okay. So you just have, I think my piece was actually, when I measured, it was like 5 point, I don't know, 5 7/8 is really what my middle section was. So you can do that. And you can adjust the stitching. You can stitch more of the rope together to get that done. All right, so let me go back to the camera and then see if we have any comments. Let's see here. There we are. And I'll check my comments. Are there any questions on how to do this? Now, if you didn't want to do the channel part, you wouldn't have to do the channel. You could just do a stitch line to give you a visual for when you go to make your other piece. So you'd have a line to stitch on, like that. I think it was my blue line. I would use that blue line as maybe my final stitching, and I could come inside just a little bit of that. So there's an option there. Oh, thanks, Marty. Now, you don't have to do round. If you wanted to do something, oblong, you could do that. The only thing that's going to um, be an issue using software to make those circles or the oblong one is your hoop size. So if you get to something and it's much, like our hoops are, what do we have, a hoop that's 14 inch. I mean, yeah, that was a pretty big base of a bowl. You'd have to make a pretty big base one. But if you have a smaller machine and you can't make the circles or whatever because of your machine, you could use the drawing method and just lay your base down and then draw around it. And you want to, I would, maybe you could also make that line just a tad outside your circle. So just to make sure you could measure and use a pin in the center and that kind of thing if you want. So just depending on how you want to do it. There's lots of ways to do it on that part of it. All right, so that's making rope bowls. Let me get my completed one over here so you can see it like that. How cool is that? I think it's pretty neat. I really like how nice and neat this is. If you're going to embroider through the rope itself, you may want to use matching bobbins. And this is a one color design, so it would be easy. But if you had a multicolor design, you have to remember to change. That's where I run into trouble because I'm listening to what other people are doing in the house, or I'm listening to a movie or something else, and I'm like doing 6 other jobs, and then I'm like, oh, I forgot to change the bobbin on that one. So, if you want to stitch through it, you can stitch through it. It still looks beautiful when you do that. But if you didn't want to do that kind of thing, you can use fabric in here. I think it's really, the other thing, what I thought of too? How about those? I did a lot of, I used to work for Joanne Fabrics eons and eons ago. And I did a lot of they had those quilt blocks of the month where you buy the package, it has all the fabrics in it. I have like a drawer full of those things. And I had thought I could pull those out and use those for my base, whether I stitch on them or not. That's kind of cool. Or I could stitch in my in the quilting of a quilt block. So if you have those orphan blocks that you did, or even orphan embroideries, maybe you did a stitch out and you're like, it's not exactly what you want, but it would work for the base of a bowl. That would be nice. I do a lot of those stitching things at shows. So I come home with all over stitched fabrics, great for the backside. I mean, I can't wait to see what you guys post for your fabric bowls. I mean, there's so many options to go. When I was thinking again about it last night when I went to bed, and I almost got back up to start making them because I had so many ideas. All right, I think we've got all the, I don't think we have any other comments. So have a great day, everyone. I will see you again next week. I'll be back for sure on Thursday. I don't know what my Wednesday schedule is, if I have a Wednesday or a Friday next week. Tomorrow we have a live over on the Continental Club, so be sure to check over there. I'm not sure. I know someone's going to be doing something with mirage stitches at some point, but I don't know if that's what tomorrow is. I don't think it's me, but I'd have to check the schedule. I'm a one day at a time person here. So have a great day. Get going on your rope bowls. There's great places to find the rope. Experiment with other types of rope that you like. Just remember, if it's a plasticky kind of rope, check your needle, change your needle when you get done with that because it was all your needle. But there's lots of options. Experiment, play around, have a good time. Watch your fingers because you might have to get your fingers close to your needle. Be careful about that. So thanks for joining me today. Hope to see you again soon. Bye for now.